Now let's discuss adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational and irrational numbers. Let's start with addition. When you have two rational numbers, let's say 6 plus 7, it's 13, which is still rational because 13 is 13 over 1, which is a fraction, and any fraction is rational. No matter how big or how small you have these numbers, when you're adding two rational numbers, it's always going to stay rational. You have 1,000 plus 60,000, still going to stay rational. It's going to be 61,000. No matter how big or how small your rational numbers go, they're still going to be rational. If you have a decimal, 0.25 plus 0.5, that's still going to be rational. That's going to be 0.75. That's two rational numbers. Now let's say you had a rational number and an irrational number. Let's say you had a rational number like 6 and an irrational number like the square root of 2. So now how do you know that the square root of 2 is an irrational number? You can try it on your calculator. Second, the x squared button, which has a little square root symbol on top, x squared, square root of 2. Oh, whoops, not that. We don't want to do that. Let's clear this and start over. Second square root of 2. 1.4142135562. Let's see if we can write this as a fraction. We're going to do up arrow, enter, to try to copy this to the next line. We're going to have the math menu, and we're going to try to press number 1, press enter, try to convert it to a fraction. Press enter. No, the calculator can't convert it to a fraction, and therefore it's an irrational number. So 6 plus the square root of 2, let's see what that's going to give us. 6 plus square root of 2, enter. Let's see if we can, this 7.414 number, let's see if this is a rational number or an irrational number. The up arrow, enter to copy to the next line, and then math, frac, try to convert it to a fraction. And the calculator could not convert it to a fraction, and therefore, this is an irrational number. Whenever you're going to be adding a rational number and an irrational number, you're always going to get an irrational number. Because we can't get rid of the radical square root of 2, is we solved over on the calculator, is 1.4142135562. When we add a rational number to this, when we add the 6 to that, we can't get rid of this decimal place, this whole long decimal that we have over here. We could add the 6 to the 1, and we're going to get a 7, but we're still going to have this long decimal at the end of it. This long decimal that's going on forever. We're still going to have that at the end of it. When we add a rational number to an irrational number, we're never going to be able to get rid of that decimal at the end of the irrational number. So whenever you're adding a rational number and an irrational number, you're never ever going to be able to get a rational number. We're going to clear the screen, and then we'll discuss when you add two irrational numbers. So here, this is a bit more complicated because sometimes when you add two irrational numbers, you're going to get an irrational number. Sometimes when you add two irrational numbers, you're going to get a rational number. So let's first try two irrational numbers that are going to give us an irrational number. Square root of 2 is irrational. We solved that on the calculator a minute ago. We could try it again just to be sure. The square root of 2. We're going to do the up arrow and then enter to copy to the next line. Math, try to convert it to a fraction. No, we could not convert to a fraction. It's irrational. We're going to try adding to that the square root of 3. So the square root of 3, let's just make sure that's irrational. To do it on the calculator, how we did the square root of 2. I'm going to copy it to the next line. Math and frac. That's also irrational. Now let's see what we get when we add the square root of 2 and the square root of 3. Square root of 2 plus square root of 3. Enter. 3.14626437. Is this rational or irrational? Let's check it out. It's irrational. This long decimal, 3.146, 2.647. This is an irrational number because the calculator could not write it for us as a fraction. Now let's try two irrational numbers, and let's see if we could find two irrational numbers that will give us a rational number. We're going to take the irrational number 2.828 427 125. We could try this on the calculator, and if you do what we did before, you do math and then try to convert to a fraction, you will not be able to. It's irrational. And we're going to take another irrational number. We're going to add the irrational number negative 1.828 427 125. And let's see what we get. We're going to do this on the calculator. 2.828 427 125 plus. Now we can't use the minus sign over here. I'm going to click it to show you which is the wrong one. This is the wrong minus sign. We can't use that one. That's a minus sign when you're putting it between two numbers to subtract them. We have to use the negative sign in the parentheses on the bottom. The one that I'm clicking at, this is the correct one. The one on the bottom, that's the negative sign. The other one is a minus sign. So even though a negative and minus are really the same thing, we have to use the negative sign when we're adding a negative number, and we use the minus sign when we're subtracting two numbers. So we're adding negative 1.828 427 125, and let's see what we get. We get 1. 1 is obviously a rational number because 1 is 1 over 1, and that is a fraction. So we found the scenario, the first scenario, when we found two irrational numbers that we were able to make them, when we added them, we found an irrational number. And we also found a scenario when we added two irrational numbers and we got a rational number. Therefore, whenever you're adding two irrational numbers, you always have to check it out to see, are you going to get a rational number or are you going to get an irrational number? What happens when we subtract two rational numbers? We're going to subtract 7 minus 5. Two rational numbers, and we're going to get a rational number. Let's say we subtract 5 minus 7. We're going to get minus 2. That's still a rational number, even though it's negative. Let's say we subtract two decimals. We're going to subtract 0.9 minus 0.7. That's still going to give us a rational number. That's going to give us 0.2. Now, how do we know this is a rational number? Either you could do it in your head. You know that 0.2, there's one decimal place, so you're going to do 2 over 10. 2 over 10 can be reduced to 1 over 5, which is a fraction. Since it could be written as a fraction, it is a rational number. If you don't know how to do that in your head, you can do 0.2 on your calculator, math, and frac, enter, and you get 1 over 5, which is a fraction, and therefore it is a rational number. Now, what happens when we subtract a rational number and an irrational number? Let's say we have pi, we already discussed, is an irrational number. Let's say we have 6 minus pi. Let's do it on the calculator. 6 minus pi. Let's see if this is rational or irrational. 2.858407346. Is this rational or irrational? The up arrow to copy it, math, frac, enter. The calculator could not convert to a fraction, and therefore it is irrational. So this, a rational number minus an irrational number is always going to be irrational. Let's try an irrational number minus a rational number. Let's do pi minus 6. Do it on the calculator. Second pi minus 6 is Let's see, is this rational or irrational? Up arrow to copy, math, frac, enter. The calculator could not convert it to a fraction and therefore it is irrational. Whenever you subtract an irrational number from a rational number or a rational number from an irrational number, it's always going to be irrational. Now we're going to clear the screen. Now we're going to discuss what happens when you subtract two irrational numbers. When you subtract two irrational numbers, you're sometimes going to get a rational number and sometimes going to get an irrational number. Let's first start with the scenario where you're going to get an irrational number. Let's say we have the square root of 5 minus the square root of 6. Now you could check on your calculator. The square root of 5 and the square root of 6 are both irrational numbers. You could check it on your calculator by typing in the square root of 5 and then doing math frac and checking is it rational or irrational, and it is irrational. Square root of 6 is also irrational. Let's try it on the calculator to see what happens when we subtract the square root of 6 from the square root of 5. Let's see, is this rational or irrational? No, the calculator was not able to convert it to a fraction for us. We did up arrow to copy it to the next line. Math frac was not able, its stated decimal was not able to convert it to a fraction, and therefore when you subtract square root of 6 from the square root of 5, it is irrational. But there can also be times when you're going to have two irrational numbers, you're subtracting them from each other, and you're going to get a rational number. So when might this happen? Let's say we have the square root of 5 minus the square root of 5. Obviously, you know the square root of 5 is irrational. You could try it on your calculator, but obviously, you know if you're subtracting the same thing from the square root of 5 from the square root of 5, you're going to get 0, and 0 is a rational number. So we have a scenario here when you subtract an irrational number from an irrational number, and it is rational. In the next video, we're going to discuss multiplication and division of rational and irrational numbers.